Alright everybody, welcome back! Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mirage 2000, France's top tier fighter jet. This thing recently got buffed, so I figured I'd go ahead and cover it, and one of my YouTube members actually asked me to cover it. Tom Gamma, who's showing on stream right now, requested this. He also actually covers a lot of it on his own channel. If you'd like to ask me to cover stuff, feel free to join my YouTube membership. I give first priority to my YouTube members. Regardless, though, the Mirage 2000, so I talked about how it's just been buffed, and the big thing as of late is they went ahead and buffed the R530D. So for those of y'all who don't know, France has been in a pretty rough spot for quite a while, at least before the Mirage 2000 got added. They had a really good time when the Mirage 3C was added. It kind of got power crept. The Mirage 3E, it at least had flares, but it was nothing too special. And for a very long time, they only had 10.3 jets, while everyone else had, 10.7, 11.0, 11.3. Now, Gaijin did go ahead and add the Mirage F1C, but that thing is not the greatest. It's an export fighter. It doesn't really... It's got Magic 2s, and that's pretty much all it has going for it. The flight performance is not there. It's not good. However, when the Mirage 2000 came out, France finally had a capable fighter jet. The problem is, it's pretty limited. You can see it only carries 4 missiles. 2 of them are Magic 2s. These are excellent weapons. I highly recommend them. 2 of them are the R530D. Now, compared to the R530F that the Mirage F1C has, they are much better. Even when they came out, they were much better, purely because of the Seeker head. So, I've talked about this before on my channel. I don't know how many of y'all actually know the difference between Pulse and CW, so I figured I'd go ahead and cover that now. So, Pulse and CW are 2 of the Seeker head types. I'll flash this on screen right now. So if you see where it says signal right there, Pulse and CW for the R530 and the R530F, that right there determines how the missile sees the target. So we have to remember, these planes do not have data linked to the missiles except for really advanced stuff like the Phoenix and the R27ER. Every other plane in the game, the missile is simply seeing radar reflections coming back from it. It's very similar to how an IR Seeker head will see heat radiation coming towards it, in this case with radio radiation, right? So it does not necessarily have to track exactly what you are pinpointing with your radar. Now, what this means is that if you have a pulse missile, pulse missiles go for the largest radar target, in this case usually chaff, right? So even if your radar stays locked on, like right here, if I was using the R530F and he chaffed, that missile would have missed. Even though my radar was locked onto him, the missile does not care what my radar is locked onto. It sees a really big radar blob and is going for that. Now, in the case of CW guidance, it is looking at movement in the field, is guiding off of the Doppler shift of the radar waves coming back at it. So if there's an area of the sky in front of me that's illuminated, and it sees movement in there, it is going to go for it. So you have to keep that in mind, especially when you're stock riding this thing, running the R530F. They're really not that great. You're going to have a lot of issues. But regardless, still decent missiles, and you're gonna be getting kills with them as long as the enemy doesn't know what they're doing, isn't running chaff. Now, like I was saying, the R530D already, purely because it was CW, was simply better. Now it's had its drag reduced and its thrust increased, so it's actually much quicker. I'm going to be showing a little bit later where I'm actually jousting with people that have AIM-7Fs, and it's pretty close in speed. At some distance, that'll actually outrun the AIM-7F now, which is pretty good. And rumor has it that next patch, the AIM-7F might be losing a little bit of speed as well, and if that's the case, this thing might be faster. So, you had 4 missiles that were subpar before. Now you have, well, I should say 2 missiles that are subpar and 2 missiles that were pretty good. Now you have all 4 missiles being pretty good, and even though it's still fewer, you can see it's a pretty quick missile. And of course, I'm using the ground-hugging strat, and the F-14 doesn't, so he dies. The R530D is very capable now. It's pretty quick. It pulls 30 Gs, which is tied for highest place with the highest pulling semi-active radar homing missile. Of course, the R27ER also has a 30 G pull, so they're pretty good. The Magic 2, my biggest complaint with the Magic 2 is the very limited range. So it pulls 35 Gs, which is really good actually for most missiles, but just the fact that it burns out so quickly and it has so much drag really hurts it. As long as you don't mind that, though, they are still very capable dogfight missiles. It's just you got to cope with the tracking delay. You can see that it takes a little bit whenever you fire them before they actually start moving. Now, one really funny thing about the Magic 2 is that it has great flare resistance. So The AIM-9L just had its flare resistance nerfed, which leaves the Magic 2 as the plane... Well, the Magic 2 is the missile with the highest flare resistance of any missile in the game right now. And so you get funny moments like this right here where that F-14 flared, and it just ignores his flares in the head-on and kills him. And I can't tell if he was burning or not really from this angle, but either way, ignoring flares in the head-on is really amusing. It does it quite often in rear aspect as well. Now, it does not have IRCCM, so you do got to keep that in mind, but it is the most flare-resistant missile in the game right now. The AIM-9L got nerfed, the R60M... The R60M is a little bit iffy, it'll ignore flares sometimes, but the Magic 2 does it much more reliably. Mirage 2000 in Dogfight, of course, you saw I just absolutely whipped that F4J. I would rather be in an F14, an F16, or a MiG-29 over the Mirage 2000, but the Mirage 2000 will still basically beat any of the earlier 3rd gen, like MiG-23, F4 handily, and it's no slouch in a dogfight against the other 4th gens either. It's certainly very competitive. Just personally, I would prefer to have something that retains energy a little bit better. Just because, as it is a Delta Wing, like the other Delta Wings that we've covered, it does bleed a lot of speed. Now, the really funny thing, the Mirage 2000 is still 11.3 for some reason. So this means that sometimes, if you're lucky, you're going to be getting 10.3 matches full of F5Cs, which is incredibly amusing. Although, most of the time you're going to be up in the 12.0 matchmaker because of the sheer volume of F14s and F16s. Now, this plane does have one of the better radar sets in the game. It actually has some aspects that are better than the F16, in my opinion. Particularly, I really enjoy the ability to switch lock types while I'm cutting in a missile. You saw that gentleman right there was just notching me, and I switched to pulse mode, or, well, just search mode, I guess you would say most of the time. For those of y'all who don't know, normal search mode is just called pulse, and then, of course, pulse Doppler is pulse Doppler. But I switched lock types mid-lock because he was notching me, which allowed me to keep the lock. Now, he did chaff, which decoyed the missile away from me since he was in the notch already, but if he hadn't been doing that, well, the missile would have kept going and got at him. Now, there's Magic 2, of course, that also went ahead and ignored flares. It was a bit close, so I think it probably was just too close regardless. I'm not 100% sure, but an R60M might have gotten flared there. That just shows off that flare resistance that we were talking about earlier. Now, when it comes to the guns, of course, guns are kind of secondary at this point at top tier, but you always want to have someone to back you up just in case when you get shots like that, where you're in your sidewinder won't lock the clouds, stuff like that. And, well, the defos on this thing are pretty good, actually. They do reasonable amounts of damage, and compared to the earlier Mirages and earlier planes of defos, they actually have a faster fire rate. So you may just look at the stat card and not realize that, but they are better than the earlier defos still. Now, they are still relatively low in velocity, so it will take some getting used to. I wouldn't recommend running stealth belts like I am right here unless you're actually really competent with it. And, by the way, that right there is another example of switching from pulse Doppler to keep your lock. But regardless, this thing is really overall well-rounded, although it is pretty limited, which is why I don't think it should be at like 12.0 with like the F16 and the MiG-29. Just the fact it only gets 4 missiles just really holds it back, but there are at least 4 good missiles now, because you have the Magic 2s, which have the best flare resistance, even though they are not good on range, and you have 4 of the better, I'd say probably 3rd best radar missiles in the game. I'd put the R27ER and the AIM-7 FNM over them, which, by the way, the AIM-7 FNM have the exact same characteristics right now. So, regardless, I would recommend giving this thing another shot, especially before it goes up in BR. It's incredibly funny right now with this BR. I really think it should go up to 11.7, and the F14 should go to 12.0. I already talked about that in my rant video. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and peace.